The second I stepped inside, I could feel the air shift around me. It wasn't dramatic or sudden, nothing anyone could point to, but the room didn't feel the same anymore. People kept talking, but their voices dropped without them even realizing it. Nobody openly stared, yet I caught quick looks, careful ones, that flicked my way before disappearing. I noticed a mother quietly pull her daughter a little closer. An older guy adjusted his bag, sliding it to the far side of his chair like it mattered. I was wearing my black leather jacket. It was heavy on my shoulders, softened by years of use, worn thin at the elbows and scuffed across the back. That kind of jacket carries its own history, like it's already said something about you before you ever open your mouth. No one asked who I was. No one questioned why I'd come in. They made up their minds fast. Just a few seconds was all it took. And maybe, from where they were sitting, they thought they had me figured out. Or maybe, just maybe, they were about to realize how wrong they were. Because when things finally went sideways, when something went wrong and the whole room locked up in silence, I was the only one who moved. I didn't do it for attention. I didn't do it so anyone would notice me. I did it because someone had to act. And I'd already learned how to carry the weight that comes with making that kind of choice. The waiting room carried that sharp mix of disinfectant and old, burned coffee that had been sitting too long. It was one of those in-between places you find everywhere and remember nowhere. A clinic tucked inside a transit station where people only stay long enough to move on. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly above us, and hard plastic chairs were lined up against the walls in tidy, uncaring rows. I came through the double doors at exactly 2:47 in the afternoon. I walked in the same way I'd walked into 1,000 rooms before. Quiet, steady, not needing to announce myself to anyone. I'm tall, sure, but not enough to stand out. Broad shoulders, yeah, but nothing threatening. My face looks the way it does because of years lived, not because of trouble. None of that really mattered anyway. What mattered was what I was wearing. A black leather jacket, zippers running down the sleeves. A patch on the back, faded so badly you couldn't read it from across the room. It probably reminded people of old movies, the kind where men like me didn't follow rules and didn't explain themselves. I took a chair near the back, by myself. And just like that, the room shifted to make space around me. A businessman a couple seats away pulled his briefcase closer to his leg. A young woman started scrolling faster on her phone, her eyes glued to the screen like it could shield her. Across the aisle, an older couple shared a look. The man leaned in and whispered something to his wife, and she gave a small nod. I saw all of it. Of course I did. But I didn't respond. I rested my hands together in my lap and stayed still. Calm. Waiting. My eyes were forward, not focused on anything in particular. A few minutes went by. Then a kid dropped a toy. A little plastic car that rattled and slid across the linoleum until it stopped near my boot. I felt the tension spike. I didn't need to look up to know it. I bent down, picked up the toy, and held it out without saying a word. The mother paused for half a second, then hurried over, took it from my hand, and whispered a thank you so quiet it almost didn't exist. She backed away quickly. I gave her a single nod. The room watched that too. And once again, they made up their minds. See, he seems okay. Probably. Or maybe they figured I was just waiting. Time slowed down, thick and sticky. The wall clock ticked loud enough to notice. Someone coughed. A nurse called out a name. A door opened, then shut again. I stayed right where I was. Just sitting there in my leather jacket, taking up space no one else wanted, existing quietly in a room that wished I wasn't part of it. At 3:02, a teenager walked in. I figured he was 17, maybe 18. Hoodie pulled up, headphones in, shoulders slouched like the weight of the world was already on him. He dropped into a chair near the door and shut his eyes right away. Nobody really noticed him. Or if they did, they didn't care. At 3:14, an older woman came through the doors, moving slow and careful with a cane. The seats closest to the entrance were already taken. People suddenly got very interested in their phones. That's when I stood up. I didn't say anything. I just nodded toward my chair. She smiled at me, surprised, grateful, and took the seat without hesitation. I stepped over to the wall and leaned back against it, arms folded across my chest. Still, quiet, looking at nothing in particular. I caught the businessman glancing up at me. His brow tightened for a second before he looked away again. At 3:22, the teenager's phone started buzzing. It was loud, persistent. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again, He finally pulled it out, stared at the screen, and I saw the color drain from his face. His jaw locked tight like he was holding something back. He jumped up and headed for the exit. Then he stopped. His body swayed. One hand shot out to the wall. Nobody else moved. He took a breath, straightened himself, and walked out on his own. The door closed behind him. I felt the whole room relax at once. Someone muttered, "Kids these days," under their breath. At 3:35, a woman rushed in, mid-30s maybe, sharp suit, phone pressed tight to her ear. She was arguing with someone, voice loud and sharp. "I don't care what he said. That's not my problem." She cut herself off, looked around, saw me. Her expression changed for just a split second. Almost nothing, but I saw it. She lowered her voice, sat down as far away from me as she could, and kept talking, quieter now. At 3:41, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. No alarms. No shouting. Just a change in the air. There was a dull sound from outside. A thud. Then silence. Most people didn't even register it. But I did. My eyes went to the door. I waited. Listened. At 3:43, the door opened, and a security guard stepped inside. Young guy, maybe mid-20s. He scanned the room, looking unsure, worried. "Is there a doctor here?" he asked. No one said a word. A paramedic? A nurse? Nothing. His radio crackled with a voice I couldn't make out, tense and urgent. He stepped back outside. I stayed where I was. For the moment. At 3:45, the guard came back in. "We need help outside," he said. Someone collapsed. People glanced at each other. The businessman checked his watch. The woman on the phone kept talking like nothing had happened. An elderly man started to rise, but his wife touched his arm and gently shook her head. The guard's eyes moved across the room, searching. "Please," he said. "He's not responding." That's when I pushed myself off the wall. I walked toward the door, and every single set of eyes followed me. Outside, the afternoon sun hit the pavement at sharp angles, bright and unforgiving. The teenager was lying on the ground, flat on his back, eyes half open. His breathing was shallow, uneven, like he was struggling to keep it steady. The security guard was already down on one knee beside him, radio clenched in his hand, panic creeping into his voice. "Ambulance is about 10 minutes out." I dropped to my knees next to the kid. Slow, controlled, no rush. I checked his pulse, then his airway, gently tilting his head back just enough to help him breathe easier. "He's breathing," I said quietly. My voice stayed calm, even. "He's still with us." The guard let out a breath he'd clearly been holding. "Thank God." "What do we?" "Stay with him," I told him. "If he starts to vomit, roll him onto his side. Keep talking to him. Don't let him drift off." The guard nodded right away. I looked closer at the kid, at the phone still clutched in his hand, at the way his hoodie had ridden up, exposing bruises along his ribs. Some old, some newer. I didn't say anything about it. I stayed right there, kneeling beside him, one hand resting lightly on his shoulder so he knew he wasn't alone. "Hey," I said softly. "Stay with me. You're all right. Help's on the way." His eyes focused a little, just enough to tell me he heard me. His voice broke. "I can't." "You can," I said. "Just breathe. In, out, slow. That's it." His breathing started to even out. Minutes passed. I didn't move, didn't check the time, didn't turn around to look at the people now pressed against the glass doors behind us, watching everything. At 3:52, I heard sirens in the distance. At 3:54, the ambulance pulled up. The paramedics jumped out and went straight to work. Efficient, focused, like they'd done this 1,000 times before. One of them glanced at me. "You the one who helped him?" "He did most of it himself," I said. "I just kept him steady." The paramedic gave a short nod. "Good job." They lifted the kid onto a stretcher. As they rolled him toward the ambulance, he turned his head and looked at me. His lips moved. I couldn't hear the words. Might have been "thank you." Might have been something else. I nodded back. The ambulance doors closed. The siren rose. And then they were gone. I stood up, brushed the dust off my knees, and headed back toward the clinic. The people near the entrance stepped aside without a word. No one said anything as I walked past them. Their faces were quiet now, hard to read. I went back to my spot by the wall, folded my arms, waited. The room didn't feel the same anymore. The businessman stared at his phone, not really seeing it. The woman had ended her call. The older couple sat close together, hands intertwined. No one stared at me, but everyone knew I was there. And this time, They weren't seeing the jacket anymore. At 4:18, a nurse finally called my name. I pushed myself off the wall and headed toward the door marked examination rooms. Just before I went through, I heard a voice behind me. Thank you. It was the elderly woman, the one I'd given my seat to earlier. I stopped and turned back, looked at her for a moment, then gave her a single nod, and I went through the door. At 4:47, I came back out. The waiting room wasn't the same anymore. Fewer people, different faces, new stories filling the chairs. I walked toward the exit. The security guard was still there, bent over a clipboard, finishing his report. He glanced up as I passed. Hey. I stopped. That kid, he said. He's gonna be okay. They told me you probably saved his life. I didn't say anything. I just nodded once more and kept walking. The door closed behind me. The guard watched me leave, then looked back down at his paperwork. That's when it hit him. He never asked my name. Outside, life kept moving like it always does. Cars rolled past. People hurried by. The sun started its slow drop toward the horizon. I zipped up my jacket against the wind and blended into the crowd. Still misunderstood. Still mostly invisible. Leaving behind only one question. How many people have we judged? Who would have been the first ones to save us?